Order. I think, Tony, you just verified that we have a quorum, so we're through that one. So before we get into anything, I just wanted to welcome Beth. I think this is your first board meeting, so welcome. Good to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Great. So I think we're on to item number 3, which are matters subsequent to posting the agenda. Does any board member have any item for this one? Not hearing any.
I guess I would just flag that PG&E's doing their PSPS, which may affect some of our customers, our loads. So just an annual recurrence, first of for the year.
Yes, yeah. First kind of warm day. Okay, any other matters subsequent to posting the agenda? Hi, Howard, welcome. Not hearing any, so I will go to public comment. So any member of the public wanting to comment on this item? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so I think we're over to the consent agenda, item number 5. Any comments on this or motions?
Sonoma can move acceptance of the minutes.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to ask any comment before we take a vote.
I was just going to move to the roll call.
Great, let's go.
Ava Community Energy.
Yes.
Did you check for public comment? Sorry.
Yes, I believe the chair. Yeah. 3CE is Rob. I can't tell on my screen whether we have 3CE. I actually don't believe they're in attendance yet. Clean Power SF.
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy.
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority.
I'll abstain because I wasn't here.
Understood. Thank you, Beth. San Jose.
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean.
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power.
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy. Yes. Thank you for the action on the consent agenda.
Great. So we're on to item number 6, which is our closed session item. So we will leave this Zoom meeting and then re-log on to the Zoom meeting. And Alex, do you want to give any instructions there?
Yeah, before we go, I know Chair Mitchell, we're joined by Josh Nelson, our incoming general counsel, and he's got our meetings on schedule now, but he's going to have to depart for today. So if there's time, it might be a good time for him to briefly introduce himself so everybody gets to know him a little bit. But I defer to you.
Sure. No, that sounds great.
Thanks, Alex and Chair Mitchell. Yeah, my name's Josh Nelson. I'm with Best Vest and Krieger. I'm actually joined this afternoon with my colleague Stephanie Smith. We're the incoming general counsel, and we just wanted to say how excited we are for this opportunity and really look forward to working with this board and Alex and his team. I will be the named general counsel. I'm a partner in our Sacramento office who's focused on representing utilities, including CCAs and other agencies as their general counsel. And my colleague Stephanie will be providing administrative support, and I'll let her provide a little bit more of an introduction, but she is a retired city clerk before she joined BBK and will be really able to help us with those duties. Stephanie?
Thank you. Yes, I am a retired city clerk, and so I served public agencies for 35 years before coming to BBK, where now I provide support to our clerk clients. I'm out of our Irvine office, but we are all very, throughout the state, we talk to each other all the time, and so I look forward to being able to provide support to you.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, welcome. Really great to meet both of you. Looking forward to working together. So with that, I think we'll move over to item number 6 on closed session. So that link should, hopefully everybody has that link, but I'll just check here just to make sure if anybody has an issue.
It was recently resent. So we're
Resent by Amy. Amy, any other instructions you want to share with the board?
I just resent the link a few minutes ago, so it should be bumped at the top of your email.
Okay, great.
Amy, I'm an alternate for Rob. Did you include me on that resend?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
Can you say your name? You're coming up for me as a
Alex.
duplicate of Alex.
Yeah, I was trying to change that. Apologies. This is Dennis Deach O'Neill of 3CE as the alternate for Rob Shaw.
Thank you.
Great. Welcome, Dennis. Okay, so we will join on closed session, and then for members of the public, we will return here for a regular agenda. Okay, thank you.
Thank
you. Okay, great. So we're all back. So we are on to item number 7A, which is approving the resolution to authorize termination of the Goal Line Energy Storage Service Agreement. So any comments on this before I go to public comment?
But I would move the staff recommendation.
Great. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Great. Any other comment on it before I go to public comment?
I just want to express my thanks to staff for the hard work. A lot of good work went into establishing this relationship, and it's been a thoughtful approach to unwinding. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I'm going to go over to the public. Any member of the public wanting to speak on this item? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so we'll take a vote.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Resolution 250601, approval of early termination of the Goal Line Energy Storage Service Agreement. Ava Community Energy.
Ava is abstaining as we're not a party to this project.
3CE.
3CE is abstaining as we are not a party as well.
Clean Power SF.
Yes.
Peninsula Clean Energy.
We are also abstaining as we are not a party to this contract.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority.
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy.
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power.
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy.
Yes.
The resolution passes by the requisite votes. I would note for the record that the project participants voted aye. For those that aren't familiar with CC Power structure, the non-project participants vote on these matters because they are matters to which the entirety of the JPA is a party. So just said that for clarity's purposes, but the resolution passes.
Great. Thank you so much. So we are on to item 7B, which is our strategic plan refresh. I think we have some slides, right? Okay, Alex, did you want to kick this off? Do you want me to?
Why don't you take it, Chair Mitchell, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so you know, at our last meeting, and there was discussion around refreshing the CC Power strategic plan, and so that was good feedback. The officers met to talk about that, and again, you know, just here as a reminder, the strategic plan from 2022 had these priorities, which were categories into build, implement, pursue, and achieve. So if we can go to the next slide. So to build on that 2022 strategic plan, you know, what we were thinking as officers is to, you know, continue to work on this in the July to September timeframe as officers during our regular meetings instead of forming an ad hoc quite yet, because we know that several members participated on the budget ad hoc, which took a lot of time. So we thought it made sense to keep it with the officers for a few months and build that content and material for our board discussion at the fall forum, which will happen in October. And then out of that, you know, hopefully at the fall forum, we can decide on, you know, the refresh of the strategic plan, but we may also decide at that point to form an ad hoc. And then in the November, December timeframe, you know, if we agree in October of, you know, what that refresh looks like, we would revise the plan and move to adoption. If the board wanted to form an ad hoc at that point, then obviously that timeline would be pushed out. So just wanted to talk about that approach to this and see if board members had any comments or concerns with this process approach.
It makes sense to me. Sean from PC.
Okay, great. And I see Jeff has his hand up.
Yeah, I like this approach. I think it recognizes that we've got a lot of new directors since we formed. And I think it's good to reconnect and reconfirm our mission. And one of the things just strategically I'll probably be advocating for is more clarity from the board to staff. I think one of the fair concerns staff has expressed over the years is what exactly is the board prioritizing? And I think if we can get better at that, that's going to help the agency get better. So I'll be thinking about that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Monica.
I support this approach as well. Is the intent also that what we kind of develop through this process will feed into the budget process for next fiscal year? Is it enough? Are we giving ourselves enough time, I guess, for next fiscal year, or is it something that will go kind of beyond when we set the budget for that period?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my perspective, and open to other officers here, my perspective is I think we'll be able to answer that in October. So if what the officers come up with and through the discussion at the fall forum, if we're aligned there, and you know, then I think the timeline that we've laid out here is that we would revise the plan November, December for the board to adopt, and then that would feed into the budget for next year as well. I think in October, though, if there needs more discussion and, you know, we're not quite aligned yet, that timeline could push out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Howard.
Thanks. I just want to echo Jeff Cypher's comments around the need to help prioritize. And I know myself, I've had good conversations with GM Morris about that, and just how much CC Power is sort of covering. I wasn't personally part of the 2022 strategic plan. Obviously, have reviewed it. I think it's a great sort of foundation. And I think at this stage, I'd love to help as part of the officer group to, you know, try to sort of streamline that a little bit, focus the efforts a little bit, and make sure that's well aligned with the rest of the board here, and hopefully some of the pre-work, but also the October session itself can further prioritize for the agency kind of where our efforts are best spent in the near term and the longer term as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Howard. Mitch.
Same, I'll keep on comments short. I think it's due for a sort of relook, and I think that the process that's being proposed makes sense to me. Thanks.
Great, and we'll look forward to your feedback, Mitch, as our treasurer. Okay, any other comments or discussion? Sean.
Yeah, sorry, Lori, really quick. I'm also wondering, or maybe just have a comment that I don't necessarily think that this is preempting sort of additional work plan items or a wholesale change in the strategic plan, mainly just kind of a refresh and review, if I'm reading things correctly. And then if individual members have comments about, you know, things that we might like to have considered, should we just reach out to you as chair?
Yeah, that would be great, or any of the other officers, but certainly reach out to me. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're correct. I think, you know, we're thinking of this as, you know, refreshing, not doing another strategic plan, but just trying to align around. You know, I think a lot of the feedback I've heard is it's broad, the strategic plan, which is true. And so within that, you know, what do we prioritize in the near term versus the later term? And so that's how we're thinking about it, or at least how I'm thinking about it. Feel free, anyone else, to correct me.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on this item? All right, so we are on to item 7C, the GM report.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Chair Mitchell. I wanted to run everybody through some updates, some good news, and then tee up a couple items that we may want to have some quick board discussion on. And then I'll disclose any of the GM activities. So, and I really quickly just also wanted to acknowledge Tony Braun, who served as our general counsel and is going to stay on in some fashion to be worked out, but will lose the title of GC, at least for CC Power, as we now have BBK. And so, Tony, thanks for shepherding us all these critical years. And I look forward to continuing to work with you. Looking ahead to the fall, so following Chair Mitchell's update on the strategic plan refresh, we've started to set an agenda for the fall forum, which is the member forum. As you'll recall, this will be a one-night event at the Rush Creek Lodge, which is in Groveland, California, which is near Yosemite. And the plan would be to spend Tuesday meeting around lunchtime and then working in perhaps a gritty work session, a roll up your sleeves work session on the strategic plan refresh. And so really that we're trying to carve out time for in-person work sessions here, followed by a board dinner. And then the following morning, there's an opportunity to go to tour the San Francisco Hetch Hetchy Dam site, understand that and have lunch at Hetch Hetchy, and then maybe do some optional activities and an optional dinner that evening. Although I expect some board members may be departing Wednesday after the Hetch Hetchy tour. The purpose of the Hetch Hetchy tour is also to get understand an insight about large infrastructure ownership and how San Francisco approaches that, because obviously that's a very large project. And so we can probably learn a lot about infrastructure ownership experiences. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it'll be a great event. And of course, we can tune the agenda, but I think this is roughly what we're looking at. Lastly, I wanted to just acknowledge again San Francisco and Barb Hale for helping us in hosting the tour, and maybe even hosting a hike near Hetch Hetchy afterwards if people have time. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to also share just a couple good news slides. So we have a newest hire started, Scott Carroll, and then our project manager, Jack, who was serving as our intern, is now going to join the team officially in late July. And that really staffs us up. And so we're building the capabilities primarily in Philippe's power services area to serve the members and manage the contracts and execute and operate things. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with you all, but you'll get to know these individuals soon. Okay, next slide. Other good news is Tumbleweed. So this is our 8-hour long duration storage project coming online next April. They are very much on track. They have received construction start certification and the notice to proceed. So construction's on pace for March. So it's already started, I should say. But really that's great. They got the batteries in, they managed the tariff risks, and now their construction's underway. So everything's looking timely for Tumbleweed. And then we have now officially launched our Tumbleweed Operations Advisory Subcommittee. This was something we discussed with the Coordinated Operations Agreement and how we frame that into the PPSA Amendment number 2. And then now there's some urgency to make sure we're ready for operations. We've anticipated this for a long time, but with the COA now in place, we're formulating the RFP for scheduling coordinator and energy storage optimization vendor services, which will be launching soon. And the members of your staff through the Operations Advisory Subcommittee are going to be involved in that, and we'll close the loop with the board as appropriate. I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, acknowledge Philippe and the team who've been helping with this. Okay.
Yep,
one other update is, well, two more updates. The next is on the Director Padilla. Go ahead.
Sorry, my hand goes up and then it comes right back down, so I don't know if it's up or down. But on the Tumbleweed, I think I understand the next step in the process is to get a scheduling coordination agreement in place, because we are the SC for this particular resource. Unlike, like the geothermal, I don't think we're the SC on that one. And so, you know, my suggestion here, or my offer here, or hopefully something that you all consider is, you know, many of us have these SE agreements in place and have the ability to add additional resources. And so I would hope that that becomes part of the assessment, because it can be quite expensive, especially for one resource, to provide, to not just to provide the ongoing SE function, but also to establish the SE function and to get all the telemetry and everything else set up and the data. It's a lot of work for one resource. So I would hope that staff would also consider using an existing CCA, so participants arrangement, and certainly we're willing to have that be something that we explore within our SC agreement. I haven't talked to Dennis yet, but maybe that's something that he would agree to as well, if it makes sense, or if the other participants agree as well.
That's well received, Director Padilla. And we had contemplated as much in the coordinated operations agreement. So we have the flexibility to look at all the options. I think our approach will be to kind of run a process to make sure everybody's comfortable with what options are on the table, but nothing should be excluded, including the option you laid out. All right. So that's Tumbleweed. And then shifting to the next slide in the RA optimization, as many of you know, we've been looking at how this software tool and optimization program could help members come into sort of a joint action situation where they can mix and match small slices of their portfolios to help everybody have a compliant portfolio and to maximize savings or revenue. And this RA optimization pool tries to do that by having an optimization tool look for where parties that could be long or short on either their power sources or their load could then mix and match and trade that, and how much value would be there. What we found is that there's over $6 million in value for members. And this would be using 8 members, and this is based on actual data, the year ahead slice of day RA filings. And then it uses that to solve for the month ahead compliance. So it's a sort of test run of how this optimization could work. Critically, though, this looks at transacting around resources, but also hourly load obligations. So allowing that trading within the model really yields a lot of value. And we also saw that the value flows to all members, not just some members. And lastly, the hourly load obligation is more than half. So trading on the hourly load obligation is more than half of the value at 3.8 million. And so we do think that's really critical. And as many of you know, that has been an idea that Cal CCA has recommended to the commission for the RA program. There's no final decision yet, but that's expected soon. And for our process, depending on how things look with hourly load obligation trading and member interest, we can then move on to looking at implementation details, trading mechanics, and further legal assessments. So a lot of the sort of gritty, would this really work and how would we structure it, setup work. We then would work to find a provider for an the optimization tool itself, and a project manager or consultant to help set that up. And specifically then we'll also have we would do this under a phase 2. So it would have a scope of work and the confirmation for people to cost share in that. So all of those items would be probably on hold for now, and we'll revisit them in the coming months, depending on how things look with the RA program and member interests. Any questions on this? Director Cyphers, please.
I just want to plant a seed, probably not for today, but I'd love you and your team to think through if this RA optimization tool becomes robust and routine and we can rely on it. Are there potential additional dollar values in the future because we know it exists? And here's an example. We get an offer in the market for something that is suboptimal for us to obtain, but helps us fill a position. But we know we have this tool to potentially re-optimize after the fact. And instead of, making an offer into the market that's very abstract. Is there potentially a doubling or a tripling of future value of this tool if our trading shop understood this existed and was robust. So I just plant that seed. I don't think I need an answer today, but if the answer is potentially yes, I think instead of $6 to $8 million, we might be looking at a higher value over time. And I understand there are extreme limits on trading for the express purpose of profiting. We prohibit that. But if trading with knowledge of the ability to optimize later is with another tool is there. Anyway, it's interesting to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways we could build on a tool like this. To date, working with your member staff, we've really made sure to adhere to this principle of optionality and giving members as much flexibility to say what would work for them or not. What that does is it at times may make the value look lower because we don't really know who's going to participate, and we're giving people a lot of flexibility. But I think it's really a good building block for looking at joint action, and we can run sensitivities now as well. Director Padilla, and then Director Sears.
Yeah, I think it was my question was along the same lines as far as what you just said. I think I recall it when we were looking at this a few months ago. In order for this to kind of pencil out, or for us to get the types of savings that you're talking about here, we need a certain amount of volume, right? So a certain number of participants and diversity in our load and resources, right? And so it wasn't just the quantity, but it was also the quality of participants. And so you kind of have a chicken and egg thing. If you don't have the participants, you can't get the savings. And how do you get the savings if you don't have the participants? And so I guess at what point do you need, assuming that this load obligation, hourly load obligation thing happens, which I don't know if it will or will not, but if it does happen, then what would be, how would you roll that out if you don't have sufficient participation necessarily, or indication of sufficient participation right now? And are these things that you guys are working on? And you don't have to answer that now, but if you guys are already thinking about this, then that's fine too.
Very well said. I've loosely captured your thinking as implementation details. So yeah, there's a lot of critical work, but we have briefed the team staff, and as you know, you guys have a lot of experts on this, so they have I think helpful ideas, and you know, we'd probably go into a sub working group to start to flesh this out, and then at some point we would issue a project opportunity notice, and that's really the official call for interest from members, and they would opt in or not. Okay, Director Sears.
Yeah, quick question, actually reminder. So what's the difference? I mean, the load obligation trading counts for, of the 6 million that you've listed here, almost, you know, 2/3 of that, 3/4 of it. Where's the other value coming from?
The other value comes from trading around the resources, and trading the resources is a little trickier because you're really trading the resource for the whole all 24 slices, so that's hard. So
I just want to
ability, yeah, that's how that works.
Okay, and then because of this, I don't know what the timing of the generation of this information, but you know, the load obligation trading is obviously an open sort of question within the proceeding right now. Has this information been communicated to the commission in any form, saying, you know what, this actually does, here's real savings that could be achieved?
Great question. So we've been coordinating with CalCCA on that, and specifically, they're aware of the analysis and following it, and we're kind of, I think, seeking their guidance on how best to share this and make this public. So today was the first step, was sort of sharing it with you in this public setting, and then we can close the loop with them on how and if and what we can share and how it gets maybe to the PUC would be, we would probably defer to them on that.
Yeah, good, thank you.
One additional last note here about where the value comes from. So we talked about the sort of mechanisms the optimization uses of trading load or trading resources. But one of the other things we see here is that the optimization can find really small transactions. And if you build a lot of small transactions, you can get a lot of value. What we find is that small transactions are harder in a bilateral market because most parties just won't do a transaction if it's for a really small amount. But if we set up an optimization that somehow allows those small transactions to occur usefully and with limited friction, then that's another way you could unlock it because those trades really might not happen otherwise. But if the optimization can spot them and help people conduct those trades, then through this matchmaker function, then you can unlock that value as well. All right, so let's move on. And now I want to shift to the geothermal phase 2A. This is we also call this the geothermal strategic pursuits. And just as a background, many of you know that we already have geothermal contracts. It's part of the midterm reliability obligation for the CCAs. But it's not always easy to solicit for geothermal. And so what this project has, its approach was to look at projects that may not be ready yet, but to work with developers to over time collaborate with them so that we get biddable projects available to the members through this solicitation. And the first step was an RFI. We had an excellent outcome from the RFI where we had many projects submitted. And so we really see a rich pool of possible projects that we may want to be working with. And so the next steps will be to evaluate all of those submittals. Shortlist is the wrong word here, but in some way, select the projects for which we want to engage in ongoing support via MOUs, and then ultimately work to enable PPA contracting opportunities. So we're off to a really great start, but I still think we're very early in the process. And so kudos to Philippe and the team and all of your staff for helping this be successful. While I have the board though, we're looking at moving forward on the invoicing. This project's already underway and we wanted to get the invoicing completed this month as we wrap up our fiscal year. So I wanted to share how we're proceeding on a couple items. First is this open item about the overlay of the geothermal pursuits with the longstanding Sonoma Clean Power Geozone Initiative, and I'll speak to that in a second. And then the last one was this nearly resolved issue of finalizing our master cost sharing agreement, and then you have a project specific confirmation that maps under that, and then we invoice. And so the cost share agreement and the master cost share structure is almost done. And depending on participation, we'll have the invoicing amounts and all that can roll out relatively quickly next week. And so we'll be emailing that out along with the invoices. And our hope is that everybody can proceed quickly on the cost shares so that we invoice before the end of the month. But before we move on though, I think Jeff, Director Cyphers, if you're willing, do you mind queuing up to just speak a little bit about this concept of the overlay of this joint action effort with the Sonoma work in the GeoZone?
Yeah, so we did see a small minority of the responses to this solicitation for projects within the 3-county area that's incorporated as our GeoZone. And so I wanted to raise a conversation that started in our group and has been expanded at the staff committee, is exploring how do we handle this particular situation now, and then how do we start thinking about future situations that might have analogs in other territories? And I think those are two different questions. But the first one is really, so we've spent about 3.5 years so far running dozens of public meetings and rezoning land and mapping all the geothermal potential in these counties. And what we're interested in is being a disproportionate off-taker of projects in that region as a result. But we're also interested in avoiding charging CC Power members for our staff time and our investments. I think that could be a complicated matter as a precedent going forward to try and track expenses and that kind of thing. And so the proposal that the staff are moving forward on is really is thinking about this particular case of allowing Sonoma Clean Power to be, for that small minority of projects, if CC Power even proceeds with those, to allow Sonoma Clean Power to offtake up to 1/3 of that capacity but have an obligation on our team to do everything we know how to make those projects successful. So to run the public process, to ensure that the politics are clean, to, do everything we know how to continue that work. I think a separate question that I'm going to encourage Alex and team to take up later is there any kind of general approach to major efforts that a member of CC Power are undertaking in their own territory, but still wish to procure jointly through CC Power? Is there any sort of general approach to that might have an analog to this? So I just want to share that's kind of where staff are heading. And if there's feedback on that, you can let me and Alex know, but that's where we are today.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thanks for that, Jeff. Monica, I see your hand up.
I'm assuming you want feedback here too, Jeff, not just through you and Alex. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because you live in a particularly, or your service territory is in a particularly rich geospace, right? It's not like the rest of us have a lot of geothermal in our backyard, but we all want geothermal, right? And so I'm a little bit torn on this one because I can't, without knowing what these projects are and what the value is, what the price is, what the viability of these projects are, I'm unwilling to say right now that I'd be willing to give up an additional share just because they're in your backyard, because I want these resources too. And we all know that Calpine develops a lot of geothermal in your backyard too. And am I to say no to all the Calpine resources as well, even the ones that they have, future ones? So it's a little bit of it feels like a policy decision on my part that I have to really think about. Because I don't live in an area, our service territory has no ability to develop any resources. Maybe we could put a small solar storage facility, but otherwise it's like we're tapped out in our geographic area.
If it's helpful, well, I just wanted to respond to that one thought. If it's helpful, I'd encourage you to check in with your team on this limited RFI solicitation, because I think they'll have information for you that might help you get comfortable. I don't think this is going to be a large proposition, and I'm not proposing this be extended to future transactions. I think we need to take things on a case-by-case basis, for exactly the reason you just brought up. So I agree with you in principle. I'd suggest that a conversation with your team might allay that concern.
Okay. And then just if you can share this information, because I'm not that familiar with your GeoZone, but are these projects that were submitted into your GeoZone or into your own solicitation efforts independent of CC Powers?
So these are projects we helped elicit, but they were submitted separately, so they're not under contract with us. And to be totally transparent, like any project we are bringing directly to CC Power would be shared with full disclosure that we're bringing it into CC Power, and that is our hope someday. That's the intent of the GeoZone. Our goal there is to develop about 3 times the capacity that we could offtake. And the hope is that we can offer all that access into CC Power. That's a very long game proposition, and it's not something that I'm expecting to even have progress to report in the next 3 years. So I think it's, it's not going to be quick.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. Sean.
Great. I also just wanted to quickly chime in and say the new piece of this that was new to me information-wise today from you, Director Cyphers, is that there is a kind of sweat equity, if you will, component to this opportunity, such that Sonoma Clean Power would be taking on a lot of the preliminary labor, including public process and all the rest of it, in exchange for sort of this up to 30%. So on the surface of it, I think it's worth discussing. I will say that Peninsula Clean Energy is interested in looking at this as not necessarily on a case-by-case basis, because there's another example where I think, there's a request for some difference in approach. And if, to me, it's like, this should be looked at sort of universally as a potential policy of CC Power. For us, we have the Baylands development, which does have a significant energy component that we might want to ask for the same type of concession here. So I just think it's worth a deeper look. And it sounds like we have some time for that. So thank you.
I'd support that. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Howard.
I just wanted to share that I had some conversation with Jeff on this topic as well. And I think we had talked about, as a broad policy matter, it's probably challenging to say we can develop a blanket policy that would address all of these issues. For our jurisdiction, we have the Altamont Winds, which doesn't have a whole lot more development to be done, but it's a good wind resource. And so I could see something like this being relevant, but at the same time, I could see it challenging to apply a policy, say we get a larger share of resources in the Altamont Pass. So I'm hesitant to say we can quickly develop a policy that would work for all of our various areas, depending on the resources that may be available and depending on the role that the CCA specifically would play in helping to further those resources. In this particular instance with Sonoma Clean Power and the geothermal work there, I understand that SCP has done significant work, and I think we'll be contributing quite a bit of, as Sean noted, sweat equity to help further this process and help really cultivate this resource. And so I at least I'll share, I'm directionally supportive of this, of support of Sonoma getting a larger share. I don't know the specifics around that 30% or overall how many megawatts would be developed with this GeoZone initiative. So it would be helpful to maybe flesh that out with a little bit more detail to understand, why 30% and what can we sort of expect from the collective effort. But I think in principle, from what I've heard, it seems logical, seems fair that with the work that SCP is carrying, and I think that work will result in more megawatts getting developed that could lead to an allocation across CC Power. I'm supportive in concept, and also think that it may be difficult to create a blanket policy, but certainly conceptually it's something that we should be prepared to discuss on maybe a case by case basis.
Okay. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, can I just reply to that really quick, Lori?
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. So I should have been clear. I'm not actually favorable to a blanket policy that establishes this as a regular practice. In fact, I'm not. But I think the general thought here is that what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? And so equitable application of these policies. So I am then equally a little nervous about sort of on a case by case basis. So I just, I think we're clearly going to have more conversations about it, and, there will be more research. Whether or not 30% is the right number, I don't know. But I think that is my point, is that I actually don't think we should go down this path across the board. But if we're going to do it for one, then we need to think about what does that look like for other jurisdictions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch, and then I'm going to try something here.
Okay. Not to belabor things here, but I guess I would fall in a little different sort of category than what Sean just described. I would think that CC Power would be well served by exploring this using Jeff's suggestion as a jumping off point, and perhaps looking to develop principles around how we would address these types of issues, because a lot of it depends on, I think it does depend on a case-by-case basis and the technology and what kind of legwork it takes to actually bring a project forward or a series of projects forward. I think that it's a pretty sort of rich conversation to have, but I think at the end of the day, I would be leaning more towards the development of some type of principles that allow us to have a place to start future conversations from. So that's just my 2 cents at this point. But supportive of the idea, I think it's exactly why CC Power is set up in the first place.
Yeah, so I'm going to try something just to build on your comments there, Mitch, and what I'm hearing. So it sounds like there's definitely needed more discussion on this. So one suggestion I could make is that we form an ad hoc to talk about these principles, and maybe focused on this particular project, because this is where we have to solve it first, but with an eye toward, where else might those principles apply. And that would come back to the board for consideration in the future. But in the meantime, to go ahead and continue to make progress, we would go ahead and invoice, per the cost sharing agreement, and, take a future action on how these projects would be allocated. Is that satisfactory to those of you? And I was thinking the ad hoc would be Jeff, Sean, Monica, and Howard. If that sounds right.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe Philippe, if I
Open
can
to that.
the board members first. Yeah. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm open to that idea. I think this is, in some ways, we wanted to prompt this conversation when the stakes were really small.
Yeah.
And if you haven't checked with your team, the stakes are really small in this case. And I think it's good to have this kind of conversation when not a lot of stuff is on the table. And so I think this is good timing. I don't know yet my opinion about whether there's a general approach to policy, so I'm happy to serve in that capacity.
Yeah, and maybe it's as simple as one meeting of the ad hoc. Yeah, Monica.
Yeah, no, I don't want to give the impression that I'm not supportive of the concept, because I do understand that this is a unique situation within the CC Power family, with the work that you and your team has done, Director Cyphers. So I do want to acknowledge that you have done a lot of work in this area, more so than the rest of us, perhaps. I can't agree to something unless I know what it is that I'm agreeing to, like what it is I'm giving up. And I think, I'll certainly talk to my team about it. But I guess, yes, I would be willing to serve on an ad hoc committee. And I'd also want to understand how I think creating some principles just around how we consider previous procurements that the individual CCAs have made. I know we've talked about this some, like if you've done a solicitation and it coincides with CC Power and you see a project and CC Power sees a project, like who gets dibs on it? Maybe the principles are around how we consider individual CCA versus CC Power solicitations and the sharing of resources, or the exclusion of resources, I guess, to some extent. So what I'm asking is, could we go beyond just looking at this particular issue, but also look at the bigger issues that seem to keep coming up over and over, and making sure that the principles are kind of aligned there as well.
I'm open to that. Jeff, are you open to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. And then my nominations for the other ad hoc committee members. You willing to serve, Howard and Sean?
Sure. I think this serves up a good use case. That's how I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it right now.
I think it would just be good to have a subset of the board talk through these issues and then bring something forward for the board to consider, so that we can move forward. But in the meantime, I want to be clear, we still will move forward with these projects and the master cost share agreements and the invoicing, while the ad hoc is working on this issue. Philippe.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. I just had a clarification question, which was with respect to the scope of work that we have right now for our strategic origination process. Shall we remove any consideration of the specific geozone overlay and defer that to this decision or recommendation by the ad hoc? Or do we wish to treat this as a example case to evaluate the merits of this type of proposal that can be used to inform the ad hoc recommendation?
I think the first, that we'll defer this until the ad hoc meets.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, unless and open to any other board member wanting to do it a different way.
Well, let me react to that. I think what is a struggle for me to go back to my team with, or my board, is to say that the kind of multi-million-dollar investment with 4 full-time staff that we've put into this effort over the last 3.5 years is not going to have any return, and that our open source approach to bring projects to CC Power and trying to encourage the geo industry to come here is something that we don't have any benefit from. So
I guess, Jeff,
can
just to
struggle a
clarify,
little bit.
I'm just saying it's deferred. It's not that you have lost that yet, or
Okay.
that the board has taken any decision on it yet. It's just that the ad hoc will meet. Hopefully you'll come up with a recommendation for the board, and then we'll take action there. Yeah, so it's not that you would have to report out to your board that you're not
I'm
getting.
good with that. As long as it feels like we can lean in the direction of coming to something that acknowledges that. I think that's the key for me, because I think the hard part is to keep my team super motivated to be aggressively pursuing these projects and supporting CC Power. I mean, we've got Stanford and Princeton hired under our contracts right now to do this work. We have a transmission summit next week on this region for geothermal, with 60 attendees from all the agencies. So I want to motivate them. I want them to believe. Okay, all right. As long as
and just so you hear, I heard support and I heard concern. I didn't hear a majority there at all. I just heard more work and consideration.
Okay.
And so I
didn't
think
want that to be a surprise to anyone. But I'll
and just so you hear
with
from the
me.
board chair, I'm very supportive of, continuing, obviously these resources are important to all of us, and we want to find a path forward that makes sense for all the members, but I'm just hearing more discussion needs to be had.
Okay.
Yeah, Howard, I saw your hand.
I was just going to make a recommendation that if it's not much work for Jeff to send out a really quick summary to the board, not necessarily requiring action, obviously, as a Brown Act body, but just to share some of the underlying detail of the work that SCP is doing, because that may just be useful for this particular example. And of course, as we talk about, broader principles, thinking about this type of a concept in other examples, that would be further informed, and that could also separate the conversation a little bit, potentially, at least.
Yeah, I agree that would be helpful, Jeff, if you could do that. Monica, I saw your hand, but then it's down now.
No, it was a mistake. Sorry.
Okay, great.
Can I amend that really quick though, too? I would like to ask Jeff, in addition, there's a few of us who have been involved in slivers of that at a much lower amount than you have. Like PCE will be at the summit next week. We contributed to the study, etc. And I know that we have made overtures, and probably some other CCAs as well, about wanting to be involved, supportive, and participatory, because we're interested in that power as well. So I think that's where I also want to just make sure that that there are opportunities for other CCAs to also invest, right? And to have potential opportunities as well. So I'll just leave that there. Thanks.
AB 527, help us get it passed.
Yes.
That opens the door in California. Holy moly. We got to get that.
Great.
Yeah. So I'll jump back in. Chair Mitchell, is that okay?
Yeah, great. Great
Yeah,
discussion.
so I just want to thank everybody for the great discussion, very rich, and I think I heard everybody clearly. Just going back to how this occurred, it's a good example of CC Powers moving quickly because of the direction of members. In this case, the reason we launched the RFI was to help source geothermal opportunities for members. And it wasn't until we were really partway down the process that we saw this challenge of how do we work collaboratively with Sonoma. On one hand, we really want them to route opportunities through to CC Power to be available to members. And we hadn't had time to develop any formal policy or approach. So this is a good example, and you'll see in a slide how I think it'll probably be practical that as we move forward there, we will identify areas where we want further board deliberations on things. And so we've called it a parking lot, but you'll see that there's some policy ideas we're starting to tee up in a list as we capture these ideas where we realize that there's not sufficient direction and it probably should go to the board. And then in the meantime, we'll try and proceed in rational ways until we get the clear direction. So we can move on from this now, and you'll see that parking lot in just a moment. But first, the most fun, invoicing. So just a reminder that as we wrap up the year end for 24-25, which ends this month, we're rolling out invoices for members for these final phase 2s that members are opting into. These include long duration storage, a couple geothermal projects, and then also the geothermal pursuits project we just discussed. And then the reason we're calling these invoices custom is that for some members, it makes sense to give them a sort of an invoice for the collective authorized amount of phase 2 projects that they then use and apply to projects or roll forward or are refunded. Or for other members, they just want a project by project invoice, which we can cluster into an invoice. So depending on what you've indicated, we'll be rolling those invoices out before the end of the month, so they hit in the current fiscal year. And then as we look to next year, the timeline will be that we'll have G&A invoices in July, the phase 1 amounts likely in August, and following the development of a phase 1 cost share agreement, which we have not completed yet. In September, we'll have the full amount of the phase 2 authorized or budgeted invoices go out following a phase 2 agreement. And then lastly, the phase 3 invoices are already authorized based on the project agreement. So those will roll out as appropriate. So I just wanted to plant these seeds that there's a lot of invoicing activity, but it'll start really 1 per month to try and make it manageable for members. And I know that some of these invoices will be a bit new and will require some documentation. So here, this lays out the plan. And further, I'll send all of this in an email. So each member will have their own memo about what the invoice plan will look like for them. Happy to take any questions on this. And then there's really just 2 more slides. Okay. So speaking to that parking lot, we passed the last board meeting, the board approved the budget, and embedded in that was a need for a policy on budget carryover and reserves. So with Treasurer Sears, we will work to develop a policy and concept that the board can review. And so that will be coming back to the board probably within a couple months. And then we have this policy potential ideas area, which is the parking lot. So we understand from conversations with members in the board that there is a potential need for policies on further cost allocation. An example of this is what's the role of load share allocation versus equal allocation. We do have a default allocation policy, and we've tried to make our cost allocation approach flexible or a fit for each project. But it still may make sense to have a broader board adopted policy on that. So we may look at that. And following the conversation led by Director Cyphers, we may have a need to look at allocation of project shares or select costs for projects in member areas with select conditions. So there could be these unique circumstances where members are providing sweat equity or there are other criteria. And so we wanted to have a potential policy forum. So I think Chair Mitchell has a plan for that with the ad hoc. And so we may see that that ad hoc recommends a policy or not. But this is the parking lot idea. So if you have ideas you think we've missed or you'd want to see on this parking lot, let me know, and I'm happy to keep track of those ideas. And then as we wrap up today, the last item was just to share the general manager activity according to the delegated authority. So the executed agreements in the last month were Best and Krieger as our general counsel, time and materials contract. We've extended Shagun, whose company is Clean Energy Regulatory Research. As you guys know, she's doing a lot of valuable work as a project management operations, and her contract structure is a base retainer that also gives time and material for excess time because her time can vary month to month. And then the new hire of Jack Schaffler, who starts July 28th. So with that, Chair Mitchell, that completes and concludes the general manager update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions on any of those items? Okay, then we are on to item number 8, which is discussion of any individual member items.
If I may, Director Cyphers, do you want to speak more about the transmission summit you're coordinating next week?
So this is a long time coming. About 2 years ago, we stepped pretty squarely into the transmission planning space, hired a transmission planner out of MISO, started doing our own modeling, and that originated from the realization that project viability is not always well assessed by developers, and the need for off-takers to kind of be in that world is growing pretty rapidly. So what we learned pretty quickly is that transmission planning in California is currently based on point-to-point certainty and without any fundamental uncertainty about technology types or prices baked into the models. So what that means in layman's terms is in California, transmission planning presumes that all the planners know exactly what technology will go and exactly where it will be installed for the next 20 years. And what we're learning is that's not a very safe model to deploy. If you're banking on offshore wind and then a president is elected that doesn't want offshore wind, you've got new risks that you didn't have before. And so a lot of what we've done is we've hired the Princeton Zero Lab and a number of folks from national labs to help us to recreate a transmission model that's open source. And so that'll get rolled out next week in Sacramento with CAISO, Energy Commission, PUC, Stanford, Berkeley, a number of other groups, Grid Labs, folks like that. And our goal with that is to create transmission planning models that incorporate deep uncertainty into the model itself. So that's what's being rolled out next week. And I'm excited about it. I'm daunted. We're new to this space and we're claiming that the old model is broken. So we have a huge hill to climb for people to trust that what we're doing matters. But it's a good team. And frankly, everyone we've spoken with at CAISO, the Energy Commission, and the PUC are pretty excited about it. They think, and E3 as well, that this is kind of fulfilling a lot of their hopes for the future. So we shall see. I will report back. And we are currently at capacity. So I apologize that this is a kind of invite-only event. The room holds 60 people, and we've got 60 signed up already with a wait list. So if anyone to come, let me know, and I'll put you on the wait list. But we're full up at the moment. So thanks, and thanks to PCE for co-sponsoring this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's really great, Jeff. Congratulations on that work. Let us know how that goes. Barbara.
Just curious, Jeff, if you've used them, how much peer review has happened of the model before you're doing this kickoff?
It's still underway. So the peer review is unfolding. We're not claiming it's fully vetted yet. And in fact, this kickoff, one of the main purposes is to get more people to peer review. But I think I'm optimistic that this is the right crew to kind of, this is the deeply technical, nerdy crew. We have a morning meeting for lawmakers that's all of 45 minutes long, where we're going to give the 30,000 foot level of this, but we don't have a bill on this at this time. This is mainly for the technical crew that will follow for the 5-hour session afterwards.
And is the scope of it the CAISO's balancing authority or all of California, or?
It's really NP 15.
Okay.
SP 15 is actually much better modeled in California. And maybe that's because that's where the load center is. But that's also where most of the new investments in transmission have been made in currently and also in the next 10-year planning horizon. So it's NP 15 that we're finding lacking.
Thank you.
Great work there. Any other items by individual members? Okay, then with that, we will adjourn. Thanks, everyone.